Hey, and welcome back to Wheat Beat. My name is Mike. Today we're going to talk a little bit about yeast. Now I'm going to have a separate video probably right after this one to talk about the different kinds of yeast, fresh yeast, instant yeast, active yeast. What's the difference? We'll talk about that. But today we're going to have a specific discussion about checking your yeast. So if you've had some weird things going on with your bread lately and things aren't rising the way you're used to, it could be that your yeast has gone bad. And we're going to talk today about how to check it. So join me today and let's find out. Well, today we're going to look at these 4 different kinds of yeast. I actually have these from different dates. One of them is actually expired, and it's the one that hasn't been working all that well as far as I can tell. So I'm going to dedicate today to checking all these different yeasts and seeing how they come out. So how do you check yeast? Really, it comes down to something very simple. You put some warm water with a little bit of sugar and the yeast, and you let it wait there for about 10 minutes, and you look to see how much it foams. If it foams a lot, basically doubles in height, then you know you're in really good shape. If it doesn't do that, your yeast is probably not as active, and it may be time to replace it. So today I'm actually going to check all these yeasts in parallel, and we're going to put them under the camera and see what happens over that 10 minutes. And of course, I'll fast forward it for you so it doesn't get too boring. But we'll hopefully find out from that what happens and how it looks and what you can expect from good yeast. Okay, so the first thing I've done is I've added exactly 3.5 grams of sugar. You obviously don't need to do this at home. I'm only doing this so I can make sure all 4 of my cups here have exactly the same amount of sugar, exactly the same amount of water at exactly the same temperature. Next, I'm weighing out exactly 7 grams of yeast. And in one packet like this, there should be exactly 7 grams. All right, now we're going to add the water, and I'm checking the temperature. It's at 114 degrees, and anything from about 110 to 115 is a good temperature. And now we're going to put in the yeast all at the same time. And now we'll start the timer. Okay, so let's look at the results here. This one was the supermarket typical active yeast. This one here was the gold label yeast, and I'll put this back just so it doesn't get in front of the camera. Gold yeast is a special kind of yeast that's called osmotolerant. It means that it's good in recipes with a lot of sugar. This one here is just the typical red label or just normal instant yeast. And this one is just another brand of instant yeast that comes in a packet. I would say they were all pretty comparable. The active yeast looked to me like it was rising the least. I'm looking for a doming and basically a doubling of the volume. While this was working here, I saw the bubble actually pop and then it went back down. This one also looks about the equivalent, and there's a very strong smell here of yeast. See, it just popped again right now. So it's actually very active here, and this one's just doming a little bit better. Now, in a lot of places where they talk about doing this test, they say you can take this and basically reduce your formulation by 1/2 cup of water and just pour this directly in, and it's been activated, and you can certainly do that. I'm not a big fan of that because you also have added sugar now into your bread, which you may have not accounted for, or now you need to do additional calculations for. So I recommend just doing this as a test to check the activity of your yeast. Now the interesting thing is that the gold label here is probably the one that looks the most active, and ironically when I look at the back of this, it's actually been expired for a few months. So I have kept it in the refrigerator, and I think that is probably proof that that works pretty well. All right, so that's it for today. I think I learned a little bit today, which is basically yeast is not as sensitive as I thought it was. The one over here that is expired has been in the refrigerator and partly in the freezer, and I haven't been all that careful with it, and it was probably the most vigorous in terms of activity out of all of them. So that definitely helps me understand that it is not as sensitive as you think. The active yeast here, these are all instant yeasts. This is the only one that's active yeast. What is the difference? We'll talk about that in the next video. I kind of expected it to be a little bit less vigorous than the others, and I'll explain in the next video why. But hopefully you learned a little something here, how to check the activity of your yeast. All of these would be suitable for making bread. And that's it for today. Until we meet next time, go bake something.